African American Music Appreciation Month. So today we take a look at the role St. Louis played in shaping the development of jazz with one of its most influential pioneers coming from right here in the Lou. Joining me this afternoon is Raffi Andonian, celebrity historian. Raffi, thank you so much for joining us today on Studio
Of course,
STL.
as you know, jazz is known as America's classical music because it takes so many different influences. It takes from music from West Africa, from Europe, and the sort of the improv version. You can hear the same song over and over by different artists, and it comes out differently, right? So we've got a composition involved.
Well, what are some of those origins of jazz? I know you kind of hinted at them just a little bit.
That's right. So there's multiple origins. Now, jazz we think of as the peak is in the 1920s, right? And you know, we think of it as New Orleans as the birthplace, and certainly it is a birthplace with the amalgamation of cultures that come together there from Europe, Africa, and indigenous peoples. But of course, here in St. Louis, you know, we're a river city, right? And we're kind of the bookends of that Mississippi culture that we're talking about, riverboats running up and down. And so with the origins from these places that have these cultures coming from, again, like West Africa, actually even slave hymns and church music being mixed with the harmonies of European sounds. And what's really cool to me how jazz develops is really I'd break it down to three main components. One is blues, which is that kind of soul, kind of folksy side of it. That's right. And then the other thing I would contribute to that is, remember in the mid-19th, late 19th century, you have marching bands from the Civil War that are going to continue on. So that brassy sound comes out of that and kind of that more upbeat kind of side to it. And then finally, ragtime, which is itself a combination of both African sounds and European sounds. And of course, the king of ragtime is right here in St. Louis, Scott Joplin, and his home is one of his homes is right here in St. Louis. In his key era, I would say, was here in Missouri. And so Scott Joplin with ragtime is sort of the precursor to jazz. Now, think about this. Let's talk about Joplin for a moment, just to see how huge he was. He not only composed more than 40 ragtime pieces, but he also composed a ballet and even a couple of operas. So I brought a T-shirt with the cover for Free Monisha, which was one of his operas, which actually the St. Louis Opera played last year, the production. So this has been, you know, kept alive right here in St. Louis. And so can you see that someone like Scott Joplin, who's the king of ragtime, who's composing operas and ballet and is drawing from the African-American roots as well, how he's really meshing those two. He's a personification of meshing those two sides together, and that's what ragtime really is about. Now, ragtime becomes huge in the 1890s. We're talking before jazz became a thing, because remember, it's a precursor, with the Chicago World's Fair in 1893 playing some of his music. But the big one I would contribute to is two places. One is when it's Sedalia, Missouri, when Maple Leaf Rag comes out from the Maple Leaf Club, which was a club there. Cool. And here in St. Louis was when he composes The Entertainer, which was, of course, revived and made famous with a 1970s movie called The Sting. Now, we're going to give it a shot. Let's try to sing it, all right?
Oh, boy. It's the carnival music that we know. That's the only part I know.
That's The Entertainer, right?
Okay,
one of the all-time famous.
Too much credit. Now, St. Louis.
And he composed that when he was here in St. Louis, and it also played in 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. Now, real quick, he is so influential, not just with all these songs that we're talking about. The hallmark that I would point to is the Pulitzer Prize he won in 1976. It was a special bicentennial edition, bicentennial of the U.S., United States, 1776, 1976. Bicentennial special Pulitzer Prize. He was dead by then. For his influence on American music, not just jazz, his influence on American music. Truly an American composer, wrapped up with as the king of ragtime, influencing jazz, America's classical music, in St. Louis. Right here, Scott Joplin. Check out the Scott Joplin house right here in town. The Scott Joplin house is absolutely beautiful. I actually got to hang out at the Scott Joplin house. We have a story coming your way very soon. But to truly understand the impact of who Scott Joplin was, he really was ahead of his time. And if you go to Sedalia, you can also go to the Scott Joplin Ragtime Music Festival. So here in Missouri, we got two places where he was big, Sedalia and St. Louis. And you can check out both, with the music festival in Sedalia and his house right here in St. Louis.
That is pretty amazing. Well, Raffi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And breaking down the impact, the origins of jazz, but not only the origins of jazz, but truly celebrating African-American music during African-American Appreciation Month and showing some love to Scott Scott Joplin. You have to go check out the Scott Joplin house. It's an amazing place to take the kids. It's free, and they even bring in an artist to come in and play. His name is Royce Martin. He is absolutely incredible. In St. Louis, if you're interested in learning more about history, whether right here in Missouri, across the region, or all across the world, check out The Celebrity Historian at thecelebrityhistorian.com. You can also follow him on Instagram and on YouTube. And Raffi's even doing tours now in St. Louis. If you're interested in learning more, head online to RaffiRegulars.com. Raffi, thank you for being a regular here on Studio STL in St. Louis. So I'm going to be right back after this quick commercial break.